Hi everyone, my name is Adrienne Cooper and I'm the Foster Care and Adoption Communication Specialist at the Colorado Department of Human Services. I want to welcome you to the first of several online conversations with foster parents that we're calling The Arena. We're partnering with Foster Source to bring you this series as an opportunity to connect, share real stories and struggles, and proactively seek support. We know that the pandemic continues to present unique challenges for foster parents, so I want to share some resources with everyone. In addition to our partner Foster Source, the Colorado State Foster Parent Association, Families Together, and Fostering Great Ideas, as well as your county or child placement agency, are all great organizations to go to for support right now. You can find these resources on our website, co4kids.org. Without further ado, I want to welcome the host for this series, Renee Bernhard, the founder of Foster Source. Welcome, Renee.
Thanks, Adrienne. Yes, I'm Renee Bernhard, and I am so honored to be here partnering with the state to have some real vulnerable conversations with Colorado's foster parents. My husband and I were foster parents for Adams County. We adopted through Adams County, and we are the founders of Foster Source, a nonprofit serving foster parents statewide in Colorado. Today, I am thrilled to have three amazing foster parents with us. We have Melody Fry on the Western Slope. We have Megan Jo Specht in Adams County and Sarah Stovall also in Adams County. Thank you all so much for being here today. I'm excited to talk to you guys. Sarah, let's start with you. Tell us how long you've been fostering, how many children are currently in your care, and what life has looked like for you fostering during the pandemic.
Sure. So we are going on our third year fostering. We've had 7 kids in our home. We currently have 2. Fostering for us during the pandemic has taken on several different levels and meanings. We had the pleasure of adopting our sweet little 2.5-year-old in November. We also had a new placement come to us at the height of March at 3 months old. And then we've also been a big support for our previous foster daughter, whose parents lean on us quite a bit and have been struggling throughout the pandemic. So we've been kind of taking it on in 3 different ways. We also have, our 2-year-old has 4 hours of therapy a week, and those are all virtual. And, oftentimes it ends up in the therapist and I just having coffee together because we can't get him to pay attention or stay in front of a screen. So that gets a little frustrating. And then just, like the support groups, the trainings, the in-person time that you get with other foster parents, it's really missed. It's huge to just be in the presence of somebody that understands. There's a lot to be said for face-to-face interaction. So.
Megan Jo, let's hear from you. How long have you been fostering? Hello. How many kiddos in your home? And tell us what it's looked like for you during the pandemic.
Well, we received our certification in March of 2020, so right at the height of the pandemic. We received our first placement on April 4th. And so I don't necessarily have anything to compare foster parenting to outside of the pandemic because all of our work has been kind of within those constraints. But as we have flexed between serious lockdown and quarantine and social distancing, I can tell you that things have been really different. I think the biggest thing is remote learning. So in the time that we have been foster parents, we have had 2 different placements. We had our first placement was with us for 7 months, and then she reunified with biological family. And then we were actually on a mental health break when we got a phone call from the county that said, we don't have anywhere for this small person to go right now, this minute. A lot of foster parents are with the pandemic, they're not as eager to take in new placements because new placements come with new germs and new exposures and things of that nature. And a lot of families with remote school, if you have parents that work outside of the home, remote learning isn't an option for you. And so,
Right.
Our county is definitely kind of seeing that strain. So while on our mental health break, we received our second placement. And I think that foster parenting and foster care in general is always hard. That's why everybody doesn't do it, right? But I think that with the constraints of the pandemic and the challenges that are unnatural that brings with it, are really difficult. So the resources that we have really taken advantage is Foster Source. That's probably our largest resource option. And I think that, the work that you guys are doing is great. I think there are services that are lacking, but I don't necessarily know how we could circumvent certain things. So the good news is I don't have to come up with any of the answers. Right now we have a 5-year-old who is doing remote learning, and it's really challenging.
You reached out, you were able to get mental health services, and I think that's what helped you continue. Would you say that's accurate?
Absolutely. So actually through Foster Source, we were able to be connected with a grief counselor who specifically specializes in grief therapy and used to be a foster parent. So if anybody's going to understand the journey, it's him. I think that those sessions actually might have saved my sanity. And, I think that it more so than anything, having resources like Foster Source just reminded us that we aren't alone. And even though this is really hard, regardless of if there is or is not a pandemic, or if the world is an actual dumpster fire, we're not alone, and that we are supported, and that even if our community and our village has gone virtual, that it hasn't gone away.
Yeah. I think that's one thing that a lot of people who don't foster, again, don't understand, is that when a child reunifies, it can feel like a death. It is very, very traumatic. And until now, there haven't been a ton of services to kind of walk foster parents through that grief. There's that grief, but there's also so much secondary trauma that comes with foster parenting, and it's something that you have to process in order to be able to move forward. Melody, how about you? You're over on the Western Slope. What has fostering during the pandemic looked like for you?
So, I foster teenagers, and they became much more reliant on social media and their phones in order to connect with friends and family and just as a way to socialize. And so it literally changed the dynamic, because when it comes to consequences, the kids would usually lose their phones or Wi-Fi for a period of time. And it's actually, we had this situation arise, and it was more or less discovered that taking that phone away, you might as well be ripping them away from their families again. It was very traumatic for my foster daughter when we did that. And it was quite the ordeal for her and for me. And, we had caseworkers and case managers involved. And so I had to adjust how I approach consequences, because taking away that support network for them, that support system, and their whole world essentially during this pandemic is not something that is okay. It's very traumatic for them. So we had to reevaluate how to implement consequences. Also had to come up with creative ideas for how to, get the kids active. And, we used to do like family nights and movies, basic stuff like games and movies. But when you're all locked up in the house together for an extended period of time, coming together for those events are important, but they're not as special. They're not as connecting because you see everybody every day. And so we had to come up with new ideas. Like I talked to the kids and, took their input into consideration, and we came up with creative ideas. I ended up buying a trampoline, and we had at one time, like I bought a bunch of Nerf guns, and we had like Nerf wars in the backyard. And we bought like laser tag packs. Another one, this one was a big success. I surprised the kids with this one. I bought a bunch of blacklight paint, and we had and mixed it in with water, and we had like a blacklight, and I set up blacklights. I bought some blacklights from Amazon, set them up in the backyard with extension cords, and we had this like blacklight water war one night, and it was fantastic.
What about for older kids? First of all, you're a longer time foster parent. You've been fostering for a while.
I've been fostering for 3 years, but I've been exploring the process for closer to 6 years. I started back in 2013, really looking into the system, and started pursuing it about 2014. And then things changed in my personal life, and my partner and I separated, and so it got kind of put on a back burner, but I always wanted to be a mom. I went through cancer back in 2012, and essentially my ability to be a biological parent was taken away from me. So I knew after that, I was like, I want to foster and adopt kids, and that's, I want to be a mom, and there's plenty of kids that need love. So I kind of pursued it that way. And then it was literally back in 2017, I started going through the training and was certified beginning of 2018. So it's been 3 years I've officially been doing foster care, and had 7 kids in my home, one of which I was able to adopt. I adopted my son, Orion. So all of them teenagers. I work with the older teens, kind of have a heart for that.
Which is so needed, so needed. Yeah. What services have you been able to find, Sarah, either in your community or a faith-based service or from agencies that have been helpful during the pandemic?
I found that a lot of the agencies that have the different resources that we need are really good with email. So they've been very responsive that way. I follow a lot of different ones on Facebook. There's been a lot more, I feel like, interaction on Facebook. So that's been helpful. And then just, like I said, I couldn't get through this without my fellow foster moms. And those are huge resources for me. And just that, if you don't know it, one of them might, or they might know somebody that does. And it just kind of leads you into this circle of support. We lean on you, Renee, and everything that you guys offer. And, I can't say enough for everything that you have done. And it has led me to where I am now with all of the, the stuff that I know that I didn't know prior. So
yeah, I can really relate to that. As a foster parent, all we wanted to do was talk to other foster parents. And in the feedback that we've gotten, that Foster Source has pulled from a lot of our services, the theme that comes up over and over again is connection. Foster parents want to be connected to other foster parents. And you're right. I think during the pandemic, there have been some great ways to connect. Of course, we have our support groups at Foster Source, but I know, for example, the Colorado State Foster Parent Association, they have the Facebook group that is statewide for foster parents in Colorado. And I know that's a great place for people to chat and connect and ask questions. And Share Fostering Colorado that's a branch of Fostering Great Ideas. They also have a Facebook group. And you're right. Sometimes you just need to know that you're not the only one feeling defeated or really struggling or down. So I'm glad you've been able to connect that way. What do you think success would look like for your family in 2021, both fostering children from trauma and during a pandemic?
I think just doing the best with what we have. I mean, we've been blessed that my husband hasn't had to travel all of this time, but he's still had a very successful job. So we've been able to connect more as a family with this time together. And I think that in itself is super successful because we can conquer some of these challenges together where before we really weren't able to. We also have 3 biological teenagers who are forced to spend more time at home and understand things more. And I think that it helps them too, because they tend to do research and, have their own input. So I think success for us is just continuing on this path, continuing to reach out when we need it, and continuing to allow those in that are there to help us.
I think that's brilliant. And I agree. Reaching out, asking for services it's not a weakness. It's actually a strength, particularly as a foster parent.
Absolutely.
Because you will be able to foster longer if you access services along the way. I think you've hit 2 themes that have already come up. That the first is kind of redefining what your daily life looks like during the pandemic, and also connection. We need connection, but look, so do our kids in care. And I think you're completely right. When they're used to seeing their friends at school, that's different. Then maybe a consequence could be taking their phone away. But when it's their only connection to their circle, it's not an option anymore. It sounds like you've had some incredible ideas for how to redefine what success looks like there. Hey, Megan, you had mentioned, if it's so hard for adults, imagine how hard it is for a 5-year-old. How have you been talking to him about what the pandemic is and why things look so different right now?
We are using verbiage about the virus, sickness, trying to explain it at a 5-year-old level. We can't do these things right now because there's a virus. We need to stay healthy, things of that nature. The good news is that, with our small person that is currently in our home, he had already been going through the pandemic, right? So, wasn't brand new when he got here. He was already doing online school, things of that nature. So we're using verbiage like virus, healthy, germs, sickness, trying to explain it at that level.
How is it different for you with teenagers, Melody?
So,
I can't imagine.
The teenagers, they understand what's going on. There's always kiddos that don't, but for the most part, teenagers, they're old enough to understand and comprehend what's going on in the world around them. And so, I talk very plainly with them about it. I put a little bit of sugarcoating on it just because I don't want to scare them. Like, you don't want to scare your kids, but I can talk to them about masks and the numbers in Mesa County and, what's going on with the schools and our community, and they'll get it. So I don't need to really put it on a different level than I would if I was talking with, say, you or a friend. So they do tend to understand that. My challenge was, the kids, we were rather isolated in Mesa County the first time around when it started in March. We had very low numbers, and the kids didn't, we didn't see it in the streets. We didn't, it wasn't something that was blatantly in our face. And so the kids kind of didn't necessarily take it seriously. Yeah. It's a constant battle I got numerous calls from the schools about the kids wearing their masks. And it's like, well, it's suffocating, it's uncomfortable, and I had to troubleshoot that almost on the daily. And, they just are very much of the mindset, they're like, well, I don't understand, if we don't see it, why do we have to take these precautions? And so I can't even tell you how many times I've had that conversation about how, it has a time frame where it's not presenting, and then you'll come down with symptoms.
Right.
And so you may be interacting with somebody in the hallway at school that has it and they don't know it yet. And so that's why you have to protect yourself. And then, it got to the point where I got very real with the kids. And I told them, me and my son Orion both have really bad asthma and lung situations, like bad lungs. And I told them, I said, if we get this, it could be deadly for us.
What about schooling? How has that looked?
So they did a little bit of in-person beginning of fall semester. And then right around Thanksgiving, we went back to remote learning. And of course, in March, everybody went to remote learning. So that was and continues to be a nightmare with the remote learning. The big issue is the kids getting assignments turned in, because we would run into the issue where they would turn an assignment in, but then there was an issue with the system and things would be turned in blank, like it would erase all their work. My one foster daughter ended up doing the same assignment, I think, like 4 times. When the kids are in their bedrooms or, at the kitchen table or whatever, I ran into 2 things. It was, okay, everybody's going to be at the kitchen table doing their schoolwork and participating, but then they would interact with each other and get distracted by whatever was going on in the house with the animals or me or the other kids. And so it was okay, be in your rooms, but then it's my one foster daughter is doing makeup and another one's talking on the phone.
Yeah.
And, you can't monitor them as closely. So you're kind of stuck between a rock and a hard place with that one. So you really have to, as a parent, step it up and become that second teacher and really be monitoring the kids and making sure that they're not playing or doing things that they're not supposed to be doing. And it's tough.
So what does success for 2021 look like for your family?
So going back, another challenge, I guess, is, when you're with people 24/7 and in a small space, you kind of get to be annoyed with each other. My kids are not exactly as fond of me as they used to be, I think. Their relationships have been strained. But essentially my goals for 2021 are just to get back to basics. Really just settling in and getting back to the core rules, getting back to weekly family day or family night, making sure we have dinner every night with each other just to check in, and trying to kind of get back to some semblance of where we were before the pandemic started. And, just let the kids know that while some relationships may be strained, I still love them, I care about them, and I'm, interested in their lives and, really making sure that they are safe as they jump back into the world of hanging out with friends and socializing, going back to school. They're in person now. So, that's part of it, is when you've been cooped up for so long, especially with the older teens, the big concern is, do they go off the deep end with it? Do they, jump right into not just socializing, but like partying and doing things that they're not supposed to? So you really have to keep tabs on that. And so I think communication and just, making that time to check in with them is going to be key.
Ease into it. What other services on the Western Slope have you been able to access during the pandemic?
So for myself personally, like, my foster home coordinator is amazing. I couldn't ask for a better support system or support person than her. And then, I am best friends and, we are basically family within another foster family. And so finding support in your fellow foster parents is really big. I'm part of a single foster parents social media group, Single Foster Mamas. And so a lot of support there, just, talking with other single foster moms that were going through the same or similar situations I was. And then we have a monthly support group meeting that I attended or I started attending because, my mental health did need that support.
So, Melody, besides the challenges of fostering in general and fostering during a pandemic, there's so much going on right now in our world that is not something we're used to. We have civil unrest, we have racial injustice. You have teens. How have you been able to talk to them and help them through what life looks like right now?
So it's kind of funny, and I'm so excited to answer this because I have a perfect example. My foster daughter is a huge advocate for the Black Lives Matter movement. We have some people on the street that are they have the Confederate flags and are very anti-Black Lives Matter. And it's been interesting as they parade up and down our street. Well, my daughter decided to do her own form of protest in a civil manner, and she made this giant sign to put in her bedroom window, which faces the street, that said Black Lives Matter. And then there was a hashtag for, essentially it was a slur against the police task force. And I saw it when I came home from work one day, and I was just like, okay. So I came in and I talked to her. I said, okay, so here's the situation. You can keep the Black Lives Matter sign up because everyone in our household stands with that equality, that movement that is currently going on. Everyone in the household agrees with that, and I feel that it's fair for you to advertise that or to the street and to the world that this household supports that. I said, however, she needed to remove that piece because not all of us in the household think that all cops are bad, myself included. And I said, you need to be open-minded about that. And we actually had a very civil conversation about it. And, explaining where I stand on the police task force and, our politics, our government, having those open conversations with her was really helpful. So, then it transformed into wanting to go to different rallies and marches and stuff like that for various movements. And, I actually thought about it, and I talked to the kids, and I told them no with the Black Lives Matter march here in Mesa County, in our town, mostly because there had been threats that there were going to be people there to make it turn violent. And I told the kids, very matter of fact, because they were like, well, you support it, why can't we go? And I said, because it's my job as your mom and your guardian to make sure that you're safe first and foremost. And if there are threats, whether it happens or not is beside the point. If there's threats that there's going to be violence, I need to make sure that you guys aren't in the middle of that. And they actually understood and were like, okay, yeah, that's a valid point. So handling what's going on in the world right now, having those conversations with your kids is very important. Validate where they stand, because they'll come at you with sometimes very one-sided opinions. And if you are able to, take a deep breath if you disagree and acknowledge where they stand and then say, okay, well, I understand your viewpoint, but I disagree, or this is where I stand, and have those civil conversations, I think it will set a precedence for the future generations about how to change our country in a positive manner, I think.
Okay, awesome. Thank you so much, Melody. This has been so fun to chat with local foster parents about what fostering during the pandemic looks like. And as often happens in foster care, things happen last minute and foster parents have to jump, and that has happened today. Both Megan, Joe, and Sarah have had to hop off the call. But Melody, thank you so much for being with us. We thank Megan, Joe, and Sarah. And we're just really excited to be partnering with CDHS and to be offering this new space for foster parents to share their truth and to connect. So thank you very much.